Hi, everybody. Is everybody ready to get started? Thank you. I appreciate the woo. Welcome, everyone. My name is Curry Sotner. I'm the president and CEO of Eastern State. I am so happy to have you all join us tonight in person and the hundreds of people that are joining us online as well. So thank you very much. We're happy to have you here. Let me tell you a little bit about Eastern State. Our mission is to preserve this historic site. This is America's first penitentiary, but with the purpose to really advance the public understanding of the criminal justice system, its impact on the lives that it affects, with the whole sole goal to create a more just society. And this is what's so amazing and powerful about this group of women up here, because when we talk about doing that work, when we talk about doing that public understanding, increasing understanding, increasing education, and changing lives, it's these four brilliant minds up here that are doing it. So I'm going to introduce them in a second, but I can't not say that and not say everybody give them a round of applause, even before you know who they are. I want to thank you all for joining us. It's such a powerful sight to be here. And when we sit in this space and we sit in this moment in this space, we realize, yes, we're in historical ruin, but we're also in a site that grappled with and experimented with the idea of how do we really establish justice in our country. This site is a place that through over the centuries, not just helped to define liberty, but it absolutely helped to define removing people's liberty. It's a site where people grappled with justice and absolutely grappled with injustice. You can say that about this site. You can say that about the idea that started this place in 1787, an idea that America should do something different around criminal justice. We should not be as punitive. We should not be painful and violent. We should do something different. This site was the manifestation of criminal justice reform in America. But when we think about this site and it's capturing these moments in times and the lives of the people that lived here, we are also doing a reflection on our whole society in America. It's not just what happened at Eastern State. It's not just what happened across our country for 250 years in trying to understand how do we really define the pursuit of happiness, but this is a case study in that work. And that is one of the reasons we come here and we gather here together to say, look at these actions. How have we changed? How have we stayed exactly the same? And what are we going to do different about it moving forward? This site was the birthplace of criminal justice reform in America. It was also the birthplace of large-scale solitary confinement, one of the most painful things you can do to any human. What that did was break down community. What that did was try to rip away community and hope from people. And this is why I think it's even more important that we gather in center here together as a community. Our society, our humanity, and our Constitution and our democracy does not work unless we gather together as community to make change. And so we are grateful for you to be here with us in person and online to gather in that community to make that change. We have an amazing panel. And what I think about this panel and this lineup up here, I think about how much work is being done and how much work needs to be done. And because we're on the 250th of the Declaration of Independence and the birthplace of our country, I really grapple with some of those words in the original meaning. And the four people up here are doing the work to ensure that everyone understands that governments are instituted among people, not just men, among people, and they're deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And that means us. We are the consent of the governed. We the people. And how do we make that change? So this panel tonight is going to dive into that work. It's going to dive into understanding the business of fresh starts and the economic empowerment for justice-involved women. And I use that word, and you probably read that our title was the business of second chances. We here, like everybody else in the country, are grappling with, was it really a second chance? Or for most people, is it just a fresh start? Is that what we really need to give to each other and to support and lift each other up? So as you can see around the room, our team is walking around with I Heart Fresh Start t-shirts, which are fantastic, but it also gives us an understanding of how these words matter and what we say and how we choose to acknowledge these things matter a lot. So thank you for being here with us. Let me introduce you to this amazing lineup. First, our moderator, and I'm so grateful for our brilliant moderator tonight, is Assata Thomas, who's you can do it. Is the Executive Director of the Division of Reentry from the Philadelphia City. So could everybody give Assata a big round of applause? And I got the newly named division correct, yes. Right? Great. It took us 3 times. We got it right. She is also one of our board members at Eastern State and a force of nature. Does so much work and a new author as well, correct? And the name of your book is again? Hold on. I'm just going to do it right.
Forward Only. Speak Life, Live Change.
We're going to do a roundup, a big round of applause. This amazing, accomplished human. We will do a roundup after this and email you all these great lists of ideas and organizations that are shared tonight, and you can find out more and read more as well. Now, next up is a good friend of mine, a brilliant entrepreneur and mind. Please welcome Tess Hart, the co-founder of Bottom Brewing. Tess is an amazing partner with us here at Eastern State, and also she brings amazing team members as well. So could everybody give Bottom Brewery a big round of applause in the back? Thank you, gang. Next, a human being that ensures hearts and minds and dignity are always followed through. Please, everybody give Tonie Willis, founder of Ardella's House, a big round of applause. And Celeste Trusty. Yay. Exactly. Moving the needle on policy across the state and across this country as the state legislative director of FAM and also one of the best dressers I know. So everybody give her a round of applause. They're going to run an amazing panel. You're going to be able to ask a lot of questions towards the end. If you have questions towards the end, please raise your hand. If you need to get up and get a drink from Bottom or some snacks, please do that as well. And everybody from online, thank you for joining us. You too can ask questions. Our team is going to pull from that list as well. Carrie will do that for us. And without further ado, let's get this panel started. Assata, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel, and I have worked with all of these women here, so I understand, appreciate, and recognize the authenticity and genuineness in which you do your work and can attest to the impact that you all have. So I'm excited to be able to be a part of this panel on tonight. So thank you all for coming. And so the program description says this is a conversation on the challenges and opportunities for women as they reenter society post-incarceration. In this discussion, we will examine the unique practical hurdles women face while applying for jobs, focusing on the importance of skill building and combating employer biases. But one of the things I want to do before getting the conversation started is I want to level set. And Carrie spoke to this already. I intentionally don't use the word second chances, because when we say that, it implies that there was an equitable first chance. And the reality is that many of the individuals impacted by the criminal legal system were navigating systems that were never designed for success. And so I frame it as equitable access to opportunity, removing barriers that should not have been there in the first place. So I'm not a component of second chances. It's whatever chance you need. And so I'm going to start with you, Tess. What unique challenges do you see women facing specifically when they re-enter the workforce after incarceration, and as business owners trying to support reentry programs in our community?
I think that first a little context on sort of why I'm in this conversation and why we're even talking about women in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I run a brewery called Bottom. Thank you, Curry, for introducing my wonderful team. And we call it fair chances. So I love the way that you said it. But similar, push back on that idea of second chance. Who knows how many chances you've gotten or not gotten? We are a fair chance business. We have been since we opened, and we now run an apprenticeship program for folks, for men and women who are justice impacted, to start growing their careers in the hospitality industry. And so anecdotally, I've gotten to experience the different challenges that men and women coming home face. But I think fundamentally, the problem starts way at the beginning. It starts with gender roles. But talking specifically about the carceral system, it's designed for men. And therefore, the reentry system, to the extent that it exists, is designed for men. And men are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated, but the rate of incarceration of women is growing way faster at this point. So it's something that we really are going to have to start reckoning with. And I think that the other folks on this panel are really leading that charge. So I'm so excited that you're going to be sharing how you're reckoning with that. But I think the challenges that so many women see in the system that is not designed for them are in so many ways more severe than the challenges that men face. And the challenges are enormous no matter what. But access to health care is fundamentally so much more challenging for women who are incarcerated. Most women, a large proportion of women, are actually incarcerated in jails, not in prisons, and the resources there, both while you're inside and for communication with outside and for when you come home, are much more limited. And I think the fundamental thing is that so many of the women who are incarcerated are mothers. And I'm a mother, and I can barely hold it together most days with all the support that I have. I have a job, and I have a child, and it is hard. And I look at women who are navigating the experiences that they have had while incarcerated, and then the experiences coming home and being the primary caregiver, and in many cases still the primary breadwinner. And those women are superheroes. And so the way that I've seen that manifest at Triple Bottom is that I have never once had we've worked with over 40 people so far in this apprenticeship program that we are running. I have never once had a man, when he gets his schedule, have to navigate what's gonna happen to his kids when he goes and gets that paycheck. Not a single time. And every single time, the women have to figure out who's going to take care of their kids. And I think that is such a huge hurdle that we don't have a system to support, either as employers or as the reentry system, as society at large. There's this fundamental inequity that reentry doesn't set anyone up for success. But having to be the primary caregiver makes it so much harder. I also see that the challenges that women have navigated either before being incarcerated and during incarceration that have really fundamentally rocked their sense of safety, both physical and psychological, show up a lot in terms of how they engage with the workplace. There is so much more awareness of what feels safe and how they need to make sure that they are protected in a workplace. So that makes them more selective about where they're going to be able to work and feel like they can actually show up. And then I've also seen they do not have time to mess around. And so I see this impatience both with themselves and sometimes with the peers that they are working with who have more support systems, that they are there to lock in because this is their chance. And there is so much riding on it. It is not just about them. And everyone, men and women, have their own challenges and their own diverse support systems. And so this is not something that is across the board, but these patterns have become really distinctive in what we are seeing and have sort of required us as employers to think about how can we adapt to the needs and the circumstances that women are bringing into the workplace that require so much more nuance and outside layers of support, because really they are all those outside layers of support, and when they have to put those aside to show up and learn how to do a job, that support goes away. And we need to figure out collectively how we can make that more possible for women to come home and succeed, because they see it, they know it's their chance, and they're ready to take it. And that's what we see every day. But it's just that collectively as a society, for women in general and especially for women who are coming home, we do not have it figured out in terms of the best way to provide support. And so I think programs like Ardella's House, which Tonie will talk about, are so critical in filling that major gap.
Thank you for that, Tess. I want to talk about some stats before we move any further. And you spoke about the rising rates of incarceration for women, which is currently 600% of their male counterparts. Over 90% of incarcerated women, 80% have suffered some sort of physical violence or abuse. The wage gap is considerably lower than their male counterparts. Nationally, women are less likely to be called back by employers than their male counterparts. Hence, women are more likely to be unemployed, jobless, or in part-time, occasional working positions than their male counterparts. Women's facilities often have fewer resources for educational and vocational training compared to men's facilities, limiting post-release earnings. Women are most frequently incarcerated for non-violent crimes, primarily driven by drug-related crimes, property offenses, and probation and parole violations. So when we think about, as you spoke about, the specific needs of women, there has to be this specific and nuanced way in which we are providing services for women who have been impacted by the criminal and legal system. I'm very intentional about that because there is no justice in the system as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very intentional about saying the criminal legal system and not the criminal justice system. Let's move on. Thank you, Tess, for that. Tonie, your organization, Ardella's House, first of all, just from a personal level, does amazing work. One of the only organizations specifically designed for women, and I know you do men as well, but your specific niche is for women and handling some of those nuances that we spoke about to be able to speak to women particularly. How do you focus on the unique needs for women reentering?
First of all, we focus on the reality that when it comes to incarceration and reentry, one size doesn't fit all. And the issues that women come home with are completely different than the men. Just like Tess said, a lot of the women come home still dealing with the layers of trauma of domestic violence, poverty, drug abuse, and those things aren't addressed while they're incarcerated. The system isn't built for anyone to fix anything.
That's right.
A lot of times women tell me that the guards told them, see you next year. I'll see you in 6 months. I'll see you when you come back. So one of the things that we deal with at Ardella's House that is so important is to give the women the tools they need when they come home to succeed, that they don't go back into the system. And one of the first things we do housing, because housing is a human right. And you can't do anything if you don't have the proper place to lay your head. You can't get a decent job. You can't do anything. So that's the first thing we do. And one of the things people say, well, how much does it cost? The women come there, they don't pay a thing. Because it's important for them to have a place to come home to so they don't reoffend and go back somewhere. A lot of times women can't go back to where they were because that environment might have led to their incarceration, or they burnt bridges and can't go back. So we give the women the tools they need to get their children back, because that's one of the things that we educate the women while they're up in Muncie and Cambridge Springs about their rights when it comes to their children, because no one tells them the amount of time if they stay away from their children that they lose all rights. I believe it's still 15 months that you lose the right to be a mother to your child. So when they come to Ardella's House, we have workforce development. We do trauma care. We just give them the things that they need that they don't go back into the system. We teach them to love themselves, because you can't love anybody else if you don't love yourself. So we just teach them that. We keep teaching them to raise the bar, you know, things that you and I take for granted, things that they need, birth certificates, driver's license. These are the things that we help the women get. And just showing them that there's more. I know one day I was looking at a book and I said, okay, I went and opened up, I was in Kentuck, and I said, all right, I'm gonna open up this cell. If you can go anywhere in the world, where would you go? One woman said, Ishkabiddles on South Street. I'm like, Lord, I gotta list, teach y'all to lift the bar, to want more. I said, anywhere in the world, anywhere in the world. So they get on me because I'm, so they always get on me because I always want them to want more than what they have. Expose them to things that they were never exposed to. It's more than Philly. It's more than South, Northwest Philly. Just giving them the things and showing them that there's a world out there because nobody else took the time to teach them or show them that it's more than South Philly, Germantown, you know, the different areas. So just giving the women the tools they need to succeed, making sure if you want to go to school, you can go to school. You can be whatever you want to be, because my mother used to make me think I was going to be the first black president, okay? Just giving them what they need. And I didn't have those challenges. I am a woman that has been impacted by the criminal justice system, and like I always say, when I say it, I feel like I need to go, you know. But just letting them know, and when I tell them that, they're shocked, and I'm like, well, how am I supposed to look? You know, how am I supposed to look? And just being there for them. Some of them still call me once they leave Ardella's house, which is fine, because I'm always going to be there for them, because somebody gave me a second chance. Somebody saw something in me, and that's why we have Ardella's house, so I can help all the other women that need the help that they need to succeed and be successful in the community again. Okay.
And you just opened your second location?
Yes, we did. We just opened Ardella's House West. This is our second house.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, because I know Celeste personally, I think her bio may have advocate. I'm going to call her, I'm going to keep it sweet, disruptor, interrupter, liberator, fighting. She's like a pit bull dog tenacity. And so if you have Celeste on your team, you're doing well. And so when we think about this from the position of legislative and policy-wise, that's what we need. Because we understand, Tonie alluded to this, we understand that systems are set up the way they were designed to specifically. Right? And so as a result of that, we are about eradicating systems and rebuilding, not fixing it, because they're working exactly the way they were designed to work. So when we think about that and having Celeste in her position for policies and changing those, I'm going to ask you, Celeste, and turn to you. From a legislative perspective, what policy changes are needed to improve the reentry system for women?
You know, this is such a huge question, and I think we could probably stay on this question for 8 days straight. You know, I think Tess and Tonie really hit so many important things, right? Our system is built for people to fail, right? And when we think about people in reentry, we always think about measuring success rates and recidivism rates. So like measuring success by someone's failure seems really counterproductive, right? So when we think about ways to improve not just reentry, but diminish entry in the first place, so much of it starts in the community. And when I go into Harrisburg and I talk to these lawmakers, and it's very frustrating because I feel like this should not be such a hard topic for people to understand. Because so many people, when I talk to them, they sit there and think, it's a Philly problem. This is a Pittsburgh problem. This is not, you know, my county's problem. But when I was serving as a secretary of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons, we did a program which allowed people with certain marijuana convictions to seek a pardon quickly, right? Guess where we saw most of the applications? It was not just Philly and not just Pittsburgh. It was so many rural counties, right, too? And so I think what we need to do is make our lawmakers understand that incarceration, reentry, decarceration impacts everyone, because our Commonwealth budget is our Commonwealth budget, right? They need to be good stewards of our money. And I'm not sure that they're being good stewards of our money right now. We just saw the Department of Corrections have their budget hearings in the last few weeks. And I mean, we're spending billions of dollars a year to incarcerate people in Pennsylvania and keeping them incarcerated, right? And then when they come out, there's so many times that we're sitting there like, well, the recidivism rate is so high. Well, isn't that an indictment on us, on the system? It's supposed to be, it's called corrections. So what are we doing here, right? If we are seeing more and more people go into corrections, the women, right? The rate of women incarceration, as you said, these are people who are pillars of their communities, and they're being stolen away. And what that does to a family, to a community, is so much more than dollars, employment. These are generational harms. And our lawmakers just sit there and say, well, okay, someone did something wrong and they should be punished for it. And they just don't think about what that means, right? And so one of the things we try to do is take people into prisons, lawmakers into prisons, to see who we're talking about, right? Because what we're talking about is people like Tonie, right? What we're talking about is people like Eric. What we're talking about is people who don't need to be there. So I want to place a bigger burden on the reentry system at this point by allowing more people the opportunity to come home. But that means our lawmakers, right, and our communities need to step up and support people better, because we can't continue to measure success and failure, because I feel like that gives a really bad vibe, right? It's like, okay, well, we don't really care about the successes. And sometimes success looks like waking up.
That's right.
Right? Sometimes success as a mom means not losing it that day. That is successful reentry, right? It doesn't mean that we have to sit there and wait until someone makes another mistake, and that's what we count, right?
I love that, and how we're measuring success and what that shows up, particularly for women. And as you all spoke about, those specific nuances that exist with women, reunification with their children. One of the things that I have found for reentry is that, and this is for men and women, but thinking about women particularly, is that when you come home, get a job, you got to get a job, you got to get a job. Absolutely not. That should not be the first thing on the list to do. We have to talk about reentry as holistic. How is that showing up? So back to what you were saying, Celeste, is the burden is on the community. And we can all sit and talk about successful reentry and what does that look like. And that looks like the community taking on the employers. Because people will talk about it, but we want them to come home, but not to your neighborhood. So how does that work exactly? And so we need to think about employers. There is such a deep, committed population of excellent employees that employers are overlooking because of I have a felony conviction. And like you were telling people, like, huh? So what does it look like? Yeah, how does it show up? And so when we're thinking about the responsibility of reentry and this entire infrastructure, it has to be built with everybody. How are we all showing up? What points of intersection, what points of this wheel are we playing a part in? Not just somebody come home and get a job. Because frankly, that's the lowest hanging fruit. We can get anybody a job. It's the sustainability. Where's childcare? Where's mental health? Where's physical health? Where are they going to lay at night? So we need to really open our minds and begin to think about reentry holistically. So this is for anyone. The next questions will just be for anyone, so y'all could jump in. What is your vision for the future of women reentering society post-incarceration? What changes would you like to see in the next 5 to 10 years? And I will say that we are in March already of the new year. You're going to blink and it's going to be a year. So think about the next 5 years will be here tomorrow in essence. So answer that question with that kind of context. Yeah. Anyone, what is your vision for the future of women reentering society post-incarceration? What changes would you like to see in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'll go with the changes. I know I just talked, but I'll go with that part. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the biggest changes that we're going to see, okay, I'm going to say we're
That's
going to see these changes.
Yep.
we're going to see more people coming home, right? We're going to change the felony murder law here in Pennsylvania, right? We are going to have people who are currently serving mandatory life without parole sentences coming home because we're going to get that law changed. We're going to pass medical release, right? We are going to pass medical release. And that means not just men, but women are going to come home and they're going to need support. And I want to say, we were talking earlier about challenges that women face, right? Specifically women face. And we think about where our women's prisons are located, right here in Pennsylvania. It's so hard to get there. It's hard for people to access care, right? We need to do a better job at supporting our women and not hiding them away, right, while they're incarcerated, but also when they're coming home, because they are going to come home, right? We do need to step up as a community. And I love that you said that, Assata, because we are going to have some folks who are not Tonie's age, Assata's age. We are going to have some folks who are going to need their families to step up and provide a lot of care. We are going to need community resources, community spaces, businesses who step up and say, I'm willing to bring this person into my community, right? Those are the types of things we need because we're going to change those laws, and we need to be able to provide the support when we change those laws so that we're not bringing people home all over the Commonwealth, right? To situations where they are set up to fail. And I really want all of our lawmakers, all of our community members, everybody who's watching to think about this, that, you know, we're in Philly, we live in Philly, we have access to public transportation, and sometimes it's not great, right, to get to our resources. What about people in Luzerne County who come home from prison, and if they have to meet their parole officer, their probation officer, and they don't have the same level of access or the resources further away, right? Childcare. If you don't make that appointment, you could be sent back. These are the types of things, I know Eric's working on that specifically, that need to change. And we also need to make sure that people aren't under this just burden of supervision forever. Because as we talk about reentry, we need to support people to be able to move on with their lives. And being stuck under community supervision is so difficult. And we are having so many people, right, jack up that recidivism rate while we're measuring success by failures because we're not stepping up and supporting people the way they need to be. So my big ask is, as we change the laws to help decarcerate our prisons, that the people in the community step up to help support those people when they come home so they're not a part of that larger recidivism rate.
Yeah, I love that, and reframing the failure rate, because we've been having that conversation as well as we're looking at recidivism. That is actually failure. What are the successes? And that we are counting small successes, like waking up, that's successful. You didn't use today, that's a success. And really begin to string those small or incremental successes to show a bigger picture. Yeah. Tonie or Tess?
I'm big on diversion.
Yeah, that's good.
Stop sending women upstate for nonviolent offenses.
That's right.
Taking them out of the house. They are the primary caregiver to a lot of homes. So where do the children go? The children either go into the system or to a person that really don't want to be bothered, but they know they can get that check.
That's right.
Okay? So then the children aren't being raised properly. So I would like to see more diversion programs and work with the women and find out what it is, what's going on, what do you need that you are doing what you're doing, and stop offending and just work with them. And
I'm going to press you.
diversion.
I'm going to press you on that. As the person who does the premier agency for reentry in the city, right? What does a diversion program for women specifically look like? How would you build that?
I would build it, matter of fact, when I purchased Ardella's House West, that was my vision for that house. That's why that house is so big, to house women and their children, to not send them upstate. Having a, really, it wouldn't even be in the city. I would like for it to be out somewhere with some land for the women and their children, and teach the women how to garden and grow vegetables and fruit, and have space for the children to learn different things. And we will be here all day, me telling you my vision for a diversion program, and have workforce development there, giving the women the tools they need to be, again, productive citizens in a community, and not go into anybody's prison. Letting them know that somebody's there for them, that loves them and wants to help them and show them that there's another way than out selling drugs or violent offenders or whatever it is. Just showing them that it's more to it than this, because prison is not where you want to be. I was one and done. One time was enough for me. Look, if you had a parking ticket, I didn't even want you in the car with me. Once was enough for me. But I just feel that women aren't getting what they need, whether it's drug abuse. I had a woman, she was a kleptomaniac, and I used to call my sister that when she would take my clothes, you know. I thought it was just a word, but it's really, we had a woman, but she was never being treated correctly, you know. And when we sat down with her and her daughter one day, her daughter was telling me that when she was 12 years old, that's when she realized her mother had a problem. Now, her mother's been incarcerated at least 6 times. She didn't realize her mother had a problem. They were like in a Wawa's or 7-Eleven somewhere, and when they were at the counter paying for whatever they were getting, and the person behind the register said, "What about that lighter you stuck in your pocket?" So obviously she's not getting the therapy, the meds, or whatever it is that she needs to keep her from doing what she's doing, that she keeps going in. So when she comes out, we're going to make sure that she gets what she needs, that she doesn't go back in and keep going back into the system, because we all know it's a wicked system. So
Thank you for that. So 2/3 of incarcerated women reportedly have mental health issues, and what the system does is criminalize mental health. I'm going to say that. And then where's the camera? I'm going to put a call to action out for Tonie. Anybody that's listening now or in the future, if you have a home and you have some space and a place for a garden, please feel free to donate it, whether now or later. Thank you.
don't forget it, like a
You
little
have
miniature
not, because you
little
and a
playground, some
playground,
swings,
name
you know,
all
for
your
the
things
kids.
you want.
Yeah,
That's
for the
right.
kids and
That's
stuff,
right. You got to
yeah.
put it out in
And
the
a couple of
atmosphere for it
vans.
to come back.
2 vans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Tess, did you want to answer that question?
Sure. I think I want to speak to the community piece, because I think that that sense of community and that welcome home is what is so important into easing that transition and doing it in a holistic way, like you said. And I think Philadelphia is so lucky, like we get to be in a room like this where there's so many people who are part of that ecosystem to welcome people home. And we need, as more and more people are going to be coming home, we need more businesses, organizations, individuals to raise their hand and be part of that welcoming committee. But I think the challenge that I see is that we're raising our hand in silos. And so, yeah, I can get you a job, but who do I call when suddenly you have this other challenge that you need to overcome? And those relationships, we build them over time, but everyone is so taxed. Everyone in this community is fighting so hard and doing such valiant work. And it's a calling, and people are going to continue to show up, but we need more resources. We need more people to be in this together, and I think some way we need to formalize that ecosystem of, well, I know exactly where to send you so that we can, but then also we're still talking, and that ecosystem is sort of a continuum of care. So we're not just sending people into another system where they're just another piece of paper waiting in line to access a resource, because you burn out so fast. When you have the momentum to go get help, you have that impetus, and it's just not there. It's not easy. So we need to figure out how to break down those barriers of accessing those resources and connecting across those resources so people can navigate them more smoothly.
I agree with you. Shameless plug. My office at Division of Reentry oversees the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition. Did I say it right? The Philadelphia Reentry Coalition, which is now up to 200 organizations who do reentry work in the city. And the challenge for me and what we're working on is how are we synergizing all of these agencies so that no one gets left? Because not one organization does everything. So if we have a way in which they're synergized, and we're not just sending people here and sending them all over the city, that's one of the ways in which we de-silo and are able to deal with specific individuals. I think, Tony, was you said that it's not a one-size-fits-all. And so we have to make sure that we're assessing persons, women who are coming home, according to what their need is. And if our office doesn't do it, or Ardella's house doesn't do it, whoever doesn't do what they need, then we make sure we have this map, this GIS map that's saying, we don't do it, but you can go here to get the help that you need. But not just that, there's accountability embedded with it. Because organizations have to have a level of accountability so that we stop this cycle of sending women back upstate or to the PDP. What is one thing as a society we should leave behind in 2026 to change this work? I want to start with you, Celeste.
I did not say that. That was Eric. I work for. I have to keep my job. One thing, Assata.
You can give two.
How about this? No, I'll go with one. Stigma, right? There are so many people who have been involved in the legal system. That is a reality. It is what our country is. It's what our country thrives on. It's what our country invests in, right? We have so much money for incarceration and wars, right? We do not have enough money for protecting our children, for education, for any of the things that our communities actually need, because I think there is such a stigma, right, involved, and people are so scared to talk about their experience. Right now, we're starting to normalize it, right? And it's wonderful, but there are still so many people who think that someone with a conviction or someone who has been involved in the legal system is not worth it, not worthy, not, the same as you, right? I mean, I might not have ever been incarcerated, but I know that I make mistakes that sometimes could land me somewhere, right? Could get me in trouble, right? I'm a human being. If I make a mistake, it's very different than if someone like my dear best friend Eric makes a mistake, right? Because the stigma attached to someone with a criminal conviction means that if he makes a mistake, he could go back to prison. We can go and leave and go grab a drink together, right? Go hang out together. Sorry, you know what I mean. Sorry. Walking out the street together, go hang out together, all of these things. And if I make a mistake, I might get a slap on the wrist. The stigma involved from this community, this country, about people who have been involved in the legal system is ridiculous, because most of us know someone, if not a bunch of people. Most of us have loved ones who have been incarcerated or have been arrested, right? And we need to just embrace that. But we need to invest in people and not punishment. That's right. So leaving behind this idea that if someone makes a mistake once, they need to pay for it the rest of their lives, that stigma involved, that's what I would get rid of. Because if we could get rid of that, right, we could absolutely change laws, change communities, change systems, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that, changing that stigma. And not everyone is ready to talk about it or will ever talk about it. But for me, after being in shame for so many years, one of the things that was freeing for me is that secrets revealed lose their power. And so it no longer, I allowed it to have power over me and how I operated it in my life and my purpose. And so people have to get to that. But the stigma is the reason why people stay in shame, right? Understood that. Tony and Tess, what is one thing that you would leave behind in 2026?
I know they're working on the bill right now for a compassionate release.
HB 150, friends. Tell your lawmakers.
I don't feel that any family member should have to go through what they have to go through to get their loved ones released and they're dying.
Yes.
Everybody can't afford to pay for an attorney, for the attorney to fight, or the quack doctors that are up there that are just general doctors. They're not specialists. And that's what the court systems are going by, what this doctor is saying up in the prison. I feel that this bill should hurry up and come. And when someone has their, what is the word for it? When they tell you, you know, you have cancer and you have 6 months to live.
Yeah, the terminal diagnosis.
Yeah. I feel that you should automatically be released and be able to come home and die with dignity. That's right. And not have to struggle to find someone to pay for the attorney and find someone that's willing to take you in. I think it should just be automatic. So I would like to see that happen and that bill to get passed, and we won't have to fight to get people to come home to die with dignity. And hopefully more people will be able to come home this year on that bill.
Thank you for that. Before Tess answers, because you said dignity a few times, and I have it written down here to ask you, can you please talk about the Dignity Act that you were such a major part of getting passed, please?
That's how we met. Yeah, that's how we met. I knew nothing about legislation. I learned a lot. Learned from her a lot. The Dignity Bill. The Dignity Bill is to stop shackling women during labor. Imagine that. Where are you going? Other than run to the table to get some more drugs, okay? And to give unlimited feminine hygiene products. And to stop putting pregnant women in solitary confinement. Oh, restricted housing, I forgot. Yeah, they might try to take the bill back. Tomatoes is amazing. It means the same thing, but the wording is very important on the bill. So that was my bill, House Bill 900. It took me 6 years. 6 years to get this bill passed. And I had more challenges with the women than the men. I remember, I can't remember her name, but I probably wouldn't say it because I might need to see her again on something. But I remember when I was talking about pregnant women in solitary confinement, and she said to me, well, if she's in solitary confinement, obviously she did something to get there. So I had to get up and act like I had to go to the ladies' room because I was getting ready to say something. But when I came back, I said, you of all people should know that we really don't have any mental hospitals in the state of Pennsylvania. The mental hospitals are Muncie and Cambridge Springs. That's where they send them. And there was a young lady that got into an argument with someone that was dealing with mental illness, and she did what anybody would do. She was trying to protect herself, you know. And they wound up putting both of them in solitary confinement. So when you just said, she obviously did something. She was minding her business. That's what caused her to get put into solitary confinement. So it's House Bill 900. It was signed into law a year ago. And like I said, it took me 6 years to get the bill passed. But thank you.
Thank you. And Tess, what would you throw away from 2026?
So much. I'll speak from the employer perspective, which is I would throw away the assumption that someone's going to fail, that you make, so many employers make that assumption within 30 seconds of meeting somebody. And I think that so many lives are deferred because of that split-second decision that someone with the position to offer an opportunity decides to withhold that based on some inner narrative that they are telling themselves about a person based on no conversation with that person. And we so often hear, well, they weren't a fit, but we cannot explain that. And I think that that is such a failure of responsibility on the part of employers who hold so much possibility. We hold so much possibility in our hands, the possibility to change your life through employment. And to just decide that that's only going to be okay to offer to a certain group of people, someone who shows up looking like a certain way, I would just get rid of that assumption of failure and say, let's give people the chance to prove it.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask this test specifically as an employer. How can business leaders effectively address or counter the biases that women face during the hiring, impacted women face during the hiring process?
I think that so much of it comes down to how we interview people in a way that helps them show their best selves. Because that first interview is the gateway to everything that comes next. My favorite interview question that we ask everyone is, what is something that you've done that you're proud of? Because it puts people in their power and it helps them recognize that they've already done something great. And that unlocks their ability to offer more. And I think most interviews, no matter who people are trying to hire, are often done in a way to try to set people up for failure, or done in a way to set people up to feel shame that they haven't met a certain level of expectation. And I think then we also need to, and I don't know how to do this, I wish I had the answer, but I think in particular, when women show up and maybe mention their kids or mention their bus route, employers decide that it's not going to work, rather than letting the person they're interviewing decide if they can make it work. And so figuring out how we remove those or disconnect those, this is the input that I'm receiving and this is the decision I'm making. How do we break that connection? And I don't know how to do it. I think there's bias training, but I don't think that's very helpful. I think we just have to start trying one by one, person by person, and then build up those new memories of this can work, and then we go out and talk about it and share it with people, share success stories with people that we know.
Yeah, I love that. I think that interviews are set up to be gotcha, right? Every question is layered in, when am I going to catch you? When are you going to say something that's going to turn me off and I'm no longer listening because you take a bus to work? So everything else you said after that, I'm not listening as an employer because I've made up my mind. So now we're just going to stay here for the hour because that's what's been allotted. But not talking to the person as a person. So I agree with you. I think there is much work to be done with employers. I think that there are many who, given the right opportunity and really understanding what it means to hire someone who has been impacted, I think there's frightenedness exists. And so how do we leverage this here, the persons who know about what an impacted person, how they show up for work, like how do we leverage that to talk to employers? And I don't mean Burger King and McDonald's and Chick-fil-A, and those are great. That's a job. I'm talking about sustainable, life-changing jobs, employment, careers, wherein a woman, because I think it's an African proverb that says if you educate or heal a woman, you heal the community, right? And so when we think about that, the power that a woman holds, we as the community are responsible. What is our responsibility in that as it pertains to a woman who has been impacted? So I have enjoyed speaking with you all. I think we have some questions from the audience, and then we will have some from those who are joining us online. Who am I looking to, Carrie? Just raise your hand if you have a question, please. And the mic, thank you, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Pamela Kennebrew, and I'm from the Lincoln University of Pennsylvania, but I'm also the president of the Delaware Valley Association of Black Psychologists. And you did mention mental health. So what I'm asking you is how an organization like DVA-BSI can become more involved with the mental health support both before, during, and after incarceration, and not only incarceration, criminal conviction. Because I was working on things a few years ago for women who had criminal convictions, and a lot of reentry is focused on when people return. But for women, a lot of the barriers have to do with criminal conviction. So that's another thing. The other question that I had, since I got the mic, is no one talks about aging while incarcerated. And that's another, particularly for women, for those of us who are women of a certain age, we know how challenging it is to just grow old out here. Imagine what it looks like growing old while incarcerated. So that's also another question that I had, and I think that's it. I had a bunch of stuff.
Thank you. I'm gonna. We can't remember. Like you said, a woman of a certain age. We losing the questions.
And I just want to say, in addition to those roles, the other role that I have is being a friend of this dear woman, Tonie Willis at Ardella's house. So.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Kennebrew. So I will chime in very quickly and say that for me and my philosophy in reentry always starts before a person leaves incarceration. You cannot expect somebody to get the door and then you want to start doing all of this work, right? It should, in a perfect world, start pre-release. And so that's my plug in terms of reentry. I'll turn it over to these three ladies to answer the rest of your questions, inquiries.
You know, Cherry Gregg has a podcast about getting old behind the walls of Muncie that's about to be released. That
April 22nd.
yeah, we've been talking, and you know, Cherry's a good friend of mine, so she's been letting me listen to bits and pieces of it. So I'm really looking forward to it. But you know, before the pandemic, we used to go into Muncie and work with the women. So that's something that I would like to start doing again, going back behind the wall. But we know that there's challenges, that they're not getting the proper care that they need. That's why so many women, when they do come home, they're severely sick and they're dying so quickly after coming home because they don't have the pleasure of having a second or third opinion, and they're being diagnosed with the wrong thing and being treated for the wrong thing. So that's something that we need to work more on. How we could talk about it, Dr. Kennebrew. If you have any suggestions how we could address it better, but that's going to be a challenge even trying to address it.
You know, one thing that's really interesting that you bring up about the aging part in prison is that last session we actually had a bill that was medical and aging. And the lawmakers thought aging needed to come out of it because when you are incarcerated, 50 is what they say is aging. Well, a lawmaker who's 50 is like, well, I'm 50 and I could go do anything. Well, they don't understand. Once you are incarcerated, you age at such a rapid rate. We're talking about people who sometimes can't afford to go see the doctor and pay that $5 copay, and so you're avoiding seeking medical care. So one of the things that we're trying to do, since the legislature was not at all interested in geriatric release, is to get through it other ways, right? So we're working on the medical release piece, which will get to a lot of the women and the men who are aging in prison. Also, felony murder. How many women are incarcerated for felony murder, right? That will help, right? People are in there forever. And then I have to shamelessly plug clemency, right? Our Board of Pardons and our governor could tomorrow grant clemency to people who are a certain age and have been incarcerated for a certain amount of time. If they wanted to, that mechanism exists, and it can be used in wonderful ways. And so this is something that could be done. We have seen a governor in our sister state of New Jersey, the last Governor Murphy, did categorical clemency and allowed people who were, you know, survivors of domestic violence and were incarcerated because of that. People who were a certain age, people who were incarcerated under old law type things where the laws have changed, but they've not been made retroactive. Clemency is an incredible tool that exists in our Commonwealth. It exists at every state and the federal level. And if our governor and the Board of Pardons wanted to do so, they could do this tomorrow. And I will say it again, if they wanted to, they could. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because everyone, right, we are paying for this. We are paying for all of these people who don't need to be there. And there is a mechanism that currently exists. As we're sitting here trying to fight for laws to change, there is an existing mechanism in clemency that needs to be utilized more. And currently, these folks who are 70, 80 years old, who have been incarcerated 40, 50 years, are being denied clemency, saying that they do not even have merit to be considered. One of those men who was denied clemency did not even have merit to be considered when I was secretary, walked out of prison on Tuesday after 42 years, an exonerated man. So they could have stepped in, and it wouldn't have made it right, because he still would have had 39 years in, or whatever that would have been, but they could have made a difference. But instead, we sat here and had to pay as taxpayers to keep that man in prison until the DA decided to file a motion to allow him to come home, because he didn't do what they incarcerated for him for, right? So again, there are mechanisms that do exist. And if those system actors wanted to do good and do what was right, we would not have jobs tomorrow, and that makes me happy, right? That would make me very, very happy.
Thank you. Any more questions? Raise your hand, please. This one here.
Hi, I'm Marissa. I'm an undergrad at Temple University, and I'm actually doing my senior thesis on judicial discretion in the post-conviction process. And one of the things that we were hoping to study was different outcomes for men and women. But with our sample size, we had, I think, about 70 men and about 3 women. And so we just decided we couldn't explore that with the research. So while we don't want more women incarcerated, we don't want more anyone incarcerated, there is a vast discrepancy. And how do you see that underrepresentation further complicate this issue?
Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, that's you all down straight over there. Yeah.
Let me tell you, this is something that really, I'm so glad you're doing this, right? Because when we see people come home, which I want so many more people to come home. The vast majority are men, right? The women are not getting the same support, right? Part of that, again, is where the prisons are located. We can do commutation workshops at SCI Chester and SCI Phoenix real quick. We can do those supports. People can go do those visitations real quick, right? And so when we have people who are hours away, right? 4 and 6 hours away from their families, from their main support systems, right? That leads to less people being able to seek post-conviction relief, right? It's just one of those situations where we see more women going into prison, less women coming out. And part of that is because we have these super long sentences, and while we're talking about judicial discretion, that's why we need to get rid of the mandatory minimums. Because as we also talk about judicial discretion being possibly a problem with post-conviction relief, we also have a lack of judicial discretion at the beginning, where people have to be sentenced to mandatory sentences no matter what the judge sees, whether they have mitigating circumstances or anything like that. And that's why we have so many people who are just still seeking relief. So I don't have that specific information, and I hope you follow up and let me read your work, because I think that's an incredible thing that really does need to be looked at, because we talk about, right, we have this huge funnel of people going in, and then we're not doing anything to help get people out. But the people largely who do get that support to get out are men.
Thank you. That was a great question. Any more questions? I said, yes.
I'm going to do one for online.
Absolutely,
Really quick.
yeah.
This is a question from Stephanie. The Philadelphia Department of Prisons is working to expand programming and strengthen partnerships with reentry providers. Since reentry truly begins at remand starting in our county jails, how do you envision partnering with PDP to ensure the programming you described can be implemented consistently within the facilities? Specifically, how would your team coordinate with corrections to identify participants, deliver services on the units, and maintain continuity of care from intake through release?
Social workers play an important part behind the wall because they always can tell me who they feel is serious and who they feel just want to come to the class just to get out of their cell and really don't care what's going on in the class. So the partnerships that they take behind the wall is really important, and it's important that they're giving the women tools that they need and teaching them something. We have a class called Life Interrupted. It's really life skills, but we gave it a fancy name because everybody feels, what can she teach me? But so we gave it a fancy name and called it Life Interrupted because basically that's what it is. Your life is interrupted when you're incarcerated. So it's just important for the prison system to get the right classes behind the wall and giving them something that's going to help them grow and help them come and want to do something positive once they're released. Hopefully that answered the question.
I will add that, and not all classes are created equal, because everybody says that they're doing the work. It's not really about the work, and understand the workings of how the impact that they're having. So reentry became a buzzword maybe about 10 years ago or so, and everybody's doing reentry. Unfortunately, though, if you don't know and have specific knowledge of organizations in the city, what happens is they can have a fancy name or they can have a great infrastructure because they have these fancy grant writers, but the ones who are actually doing the work with less tend to get overlooked. And so I would offer that in partnering with PDP, that the organizations that are going in have been properly vetted and they're checking to understand, listen, do these people actually do the work or they just have this fancy name, right? Because we're impacting people's lives. Yeah.
I still go and do classes. I'm still hands-on. I probably will be hands-on until the day I die because it's important for me. And even if I'm not teaching the class, I still sit in on the class and making sure that they're giving them something that they need, that they're teaching the class correctly. So,
thank you. You going to go back online or we're out here?
Question to Assata, because I know she's done the work for a long time, to be very transparent. Another question I have in terms of for the faith communities in the city of Philadelphia, or the impact of communities that are marginalized, do you feel that there's not enough the faith communities are doing? Do you feel there should be more of a situation where the faith communities are trying to impact their neighborhoods or communities? Or do you think that there should be more conversation on even assisting them and helping them and try to deal with or training them, try to deal with some of the issues in the community?
You said that question was for Assata? That's my, okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, great question. I think that lots of the faith community are involved with reentry and pre-entry work, post-incarceration. I think that it could be more because people often will go to their faith provider to get supports. And so I think that it can be built out more. I know that under Mayor Parker's leadership, Bishop Speaks is the director of faith initiatives, and he works closely with our office in talking about how are we synergizing efforts so that your office of faith initiatives, which encompasses all faiths, can be able to build this strong foundation for persons who have been impacted. So my question is, the answer is dual. Is the faith community involved? 1,000%. Could there be more? Could we build out more? 1,000%. Yes. You're welcome. There was a question here. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't look to my right.
May I hold it? Okay. Greetings, my name is Ahava Divine, and I'm from Camden, New Jersey. I typed my question. I've been doing work in Camden and throughout the state with my partner, Anton Henshaw, through the new entry model for returning citizens for like the last 6 or 7 years. And I really appreciate the discussion around housing, employment, and mental health supports. In the work I've done, I've been in law enforcement, I've been a therapist, I've done a little bit of everything to see what I like. And right now, I'm in school to become a doctor. And in the work I've done, I've noticed that many participants returning from incarceration are also navigating deep spiritual disconnection and ancestral trauma, things that often sit beneath the mental health and behavioral challenges we see. I'm curious how the panel thinks about the role of spiritual healing or ancestral restoration in the reintegration process. Do you see a place for that in reentry models that you all are currently participating in? And if so, how might systems begin to acknowledge or support the dimensions of healing when it comes to spiritual? For those who don't know what I'm referencing when I speak of ancestral trauma, I'm talking about the patterns of trauma that can be carried across generations through family experiences, cultural history, and systematic oppression.
That's a wonderful question. I'll go while y'all think about it. So I think that healing takes place on different levels. I think that there's different avenues for healing to happen and to take place. And so to your point specifically about ancestral healing, is that what it's called? Spiritual healing, yeah. Thank you for that. I think that has to be addressed because it's generational legacy of trauma. And if we're not dealing with the generations, that layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, what we end up doing is putting a dress on a pig and calling a pig something else. And so it is one of the levels of healing that I feel absolutely should be part of the system of healing work that has to be done or needs to be done. And I'm going to refer back to Dr. Kinnebrew as he was talking about the mental health piece. And so this is where we think about the community, like how are those spiritual healers showing up? How do we find them? Where are they? Are they making themselves known so that when a therapist is supporting a person, that we have this access to be able to say, this needs to go a little deeper. It may be beyond my purview, but I know, what's your name again? Ahavana, who's getting her doctorate or whatever, and you can go here to get that healing. So I think it exists within the infrastructure of what needs to be built so that we're dealing with all of the areas of healing. Yeah.
I feel like this is a question that also just applies so much to everyone, right?
Yeah.
If everyone needs something, right? It's not just people who have been justice involved. People who work in corrections need something. I mean, they're people. Everybody is a person. And until we as society start to recognize and reckon with the harm that has been caused throughout generations, which is constantly being pushed against, exhibits being taken down, whitewashing of history, all of those things, until we actually start, and I don't want to say this, but I feel, it's like when all of us kind of die off and we have younger folks who are actually more educated and understand what life is actually about, when we get more young folks who understand community and lead with empathy, right, as leaders, as electeds, and when our generation decides that we want to step back, right, because a lot of the people in our generations are the ones who created these laws, right? And they're going to sit there and say, we don't want to admit that we're wrong, right? But at some point, they got to step down, or they should step down, right? And we need people like you, right, to step up and be those leaders, to question, like, what about generational harm in our communities, in reentry spaces, right? What about spiritual harm and connection and restoration? I will say that I have met a lot of people on the inside that their faith and their faith community they've built inside has literally maintained them and allowed them to get through something, whether it's a day, right? Because I'm sorry, I couldn't do it, right? Or something like being denied clemency, right? Where it's, or a loss of a loved one, right? And so I really want to applaud those folks who, despite those situations, right, still find ways to rely on their faith. And I will say it's not always easy, because corrections doesn't always make space for people to have like spiritual healing, generational healing. It's not built for that, right? But there are people who are standing up inside and really doing it. And then there are people on the outside, faith leaders and, real healers who are making it their purpose to go in and offer themselves to the folks inside.
Yeah, I love that. And are you going to speak to us? Go right ahead.
Hop in. I love what you said about making space, and I think that is something that no matter your role in the ecosystem, that we are all able to offer. And so whether or not we can prescribe the pathway to healing, we can make space and we can make safety. Because I don't think healing can begin until you feel safe in that moment and safe in a relationship. And so I know with our work, we take a lot of time to build trust and relationship with the people who we get to work with every day, so that they know that they have the space. It's all centered around their individual experiences. They know they have the space to fail. That's a big thing. And the space to ask for help. And then once we've built that trusting relationship, we bring in a therapist as well. And so to sort of reaffirm that space among the cohort and among each other's peers. But I don't know that we necessarily offer the path to healing in the way that you're speaking, but we try to create space for people to begin to unearth it themselves, I think, and create the safety to do that.
Thank you. You reminded me to stop using the word trauma care, because I met a doctor in LA. She said we call it healing care. Okay? And thank you for reminding me. I come from an era, because I'm a woman of a certain age, from the era what goes on in the house stays in the house.
Yeah.
Don't put our business out in the street. So when things are going on, it's never addressed. And I also come from an era where us of color didn't go get therapy.
That's right.
We just didn't believe in it. We just felt that we didn't need it. If it wasn't given to us in a church, we just didn't deal with it. I have come across a mother and daughter who are incarcerated because they never dealt with spiritual healing or any type of healing. And I just met them recently, and hopefully they'll get what they need. They're home now. And it's something that we need to talk more about, and maybe we could talk about it some more after this, because it's something that is needed in the community. And I tell people all the time, everybody has gone through some form of trauma in their lives. Some people's trauma is more than others. And some people just walk around like everything's fine, but once they get home, it's a different story. So
That's good. To Tonie's point, I would just end with, you can't conquer what you don't confront, and you can't confront what you don't identify. And because of this, what goes on in the house stays in the house. There is this cloak of secrecy that Black persons particularly are under. And so until we begin to confront and identify those things, we can't address those healing spaces. Eric, you had a question?
I'm happy you brought that up because just for reference, when I walked out of prison, there was no trauma care. There was no aftercare offered. And I walked out of prison after 31 years. I'm sorry. Thank you. Oh, all right. I won't touch it. And so I know the conversation is really about the trauma that happened prior to prison.
That's right.
And it's like pre-trauma to the trauma.
That's right.
And the pre-trauma is never even addressed, but it's compounded with the prison.
That's right.
And so when you walk out, you have more trauma.
Picks.
And that's, I think, where, when it comes to women and the emotional component that is there. With men, it's completely different because we have to push that shit down. You just got to tighten up. But with women,
No, you need community. You need all that stuff. And I know that Tonie is in that space to really see the women that not only need a spiritual attachment or a journey, like, you know, to get into that, but to be in a more cerebral space about what actually happened to you. Like, it's a whole different consciousness. But there's only cognitive behavioral therapy. So I think the spiritual aspect would probably be way more effective. Talk about that.
You know, a lot of times when women are being released, the children are at the door, at the gate, meeting them, and the women don't even have a chance to deal with what they've been through because the caregiver is ready to give them their kids.
That's right. Incarceration, a gift that keeps on giving, right? And the reverberating effects that has. So to your point, a woman is released. The first thing the caregiver is, you got to take your child back, but hold on, wait a minute. And so this expectation that a woman is coming out just ready to take over the world, because that's what we do. We just move and shake, move and shake. And without getting what you need, the consequences of how that shows up is what's devastating. Yeah. Was there other? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm just pointing out people. I'm gonna stay over here in my lane as the moderator. Sorry.
So you talked a little bit about like the bias specifically in like employers, and I was just wondering, how do you think that bias that you've talked about has an impact in the courts, specifically in like sentencing and releasing?
I think a lot of people have feelings about this, but I think there's so much consistency. There's a through line there, right? It's thinking about the people who are privileged to be in power and the communities that they have been brought up to value and the communities that they have been brought up not to value, and whether intentionally or not, and the fact that those people in power make the decisions. It's what we see in courts is it's almost like a job interview, right? It's a gotcha moment. Yeah. People are set up to fail, and the people who are making the decisions prescribe them based on what they think they know and what they think success could look like, and often based on that assumption of failure. So I think you're so right to point out that connection between that court decision and that job interview decision. It's all based on that thread of bias that comes from who has the power and what do they believe, how they believe they should share it.
I mean, if you are black, you are far more likely to have police surveillance, so you're far more likely to get arrested. And then if you are black and you are white, you are far more likely to get a higher sentence if you are black than you are white, and you do the same exact thing. Yes. White people do bad things too, right? And our system doesn't seem to hold that thought, right? And so we see bias from the moment a black or brown person takes their first breath. Before that, right? Because maternal health care. So there's bias in everything. So then you have judges who see far more black people than they see white people. So what are then judges going to think? When you see a person on the news who has been arrested, a black person is going to likely have a mugshot. I have seen white people who have killed their whole families, and those pictures are them on a jet ski, okay? When you watch CSI, the bias is that these things are wrapped up and pretty and everyone's happy. No one's ever happy. So incarceration then ruins black communities, black families. No one's ever happy, right? So you see bias from the moment a person is conceived until the moment they die. God forbid you get caught up in the legal system, right? It is so much harder to be a black person in the legal system. Then you go up to seek release, same thing, right? And so we see it. We have racism in our country. It is just the way it is. We are silly if we expect that that's not going to show up in our courts, right? That's why we see what we see when we go into our prisons, when we go into our jails. What do we see, right? Largely black and brown people, right? when we talk about why people end up in prison, in jail, with a conviction, we have to fund public defense. We have people who are charged, accused of something, but the accuser has more resources. The Commonwealth, the city has so many more resources to attack someone, but we don't give resources to public defense. When most of the people who see themselves in the legal system need that support. Lawyers are expensive. Public defenders are some of the best people in the world, and we don't do what we should do to support them so that we see better representation throughout the legal system, right? I think that could make such a difference because people who are accused would have the resources to have mitigation specialists, research done.
I was going to say something real easy. There's a real easy correlation between the commodification of black and brown people in prison and consumerism. Black and brown people are consumers, the largest consumers. You look at the commodification of people. Okay, well, you don't own things, you buy things. So now your value is not necessarily in that society. You're more valuable as a commodity in the system.
Thank you. An amazing panel as always, but my quick question, my name's Michelle. My quick question is about going back to the diversion question, right? So right now, the DA's office, police, etc., they're like focused on more vulnerable communities like the youth, right? So we're trying to have diversion for them, not this, you know, to the school, to prison pipeline, etc. What are we doing for women and the vulnerability that women, I was a public defender, and I know what it's like when I would represent women just for like prostitution cases. I'm like, why are we even here? Are the men getting arrested too? Then they would charge, you know, have the women pay fines and costs. I'm like, how do you think they're making money? It was insane to me. So I'm glad that we're not going down that road right now. But how do we de-incarcerate some of these charges? How do we get them not even in the system in the first place? You know, there should be sort of like, if you're charged with this, and let's get to the root of it so that they never even touch the system. So if there's been a push for vulnerable communities and a focus on the youth, why are we not focusing on women?
We have a partnership with the DA's office with our workforce development, and it's called Emerging Adults. And they're first-time offenders, and once they complete the program, then their record will get expunged. So that's one of the things that we're doing right now with a lot of the young people also, but we have men and women in this program. So it's a start to get their record expunged and help them find employment.
I would also really talk about restorative justice as a process, right? Because I know the DA's office is doing it. There are some incredible people. I got to shout Felix Rosado. You know, that can be so powerful, and we're not just talking about these minor types of things, right? You can use restorative justice for real harm caused, right? And I think I mentioned earlier how like our system just doesn't do anything to actually heal, right? Everybody is just still angry and hurt and harmed. And restorative justice can be so beautiful, right? I met this incredible mother whose son had been tragically murdered. He was a teenager behind Roxborough High School not too long ago. And she went through a restorative justice process with the people who took her son's life. It doesn't mean that she is not terribly upset about her loss, but she said she's honoring her son's memory, right, by participating in the restorative justice process and understanding that the people who took her son's life did have the trauma, right?
So I started a year ago being involved in the restorative justice movement in Philadelphia, and also going to the meetings that they have in Pablo at Penn, the Wisdom Circle. We also meet online. So if anybody wants to be involved in that, in like 2 Fridays from now, we're meeting at 10 from 10 to 3. So if anybody wants to get involved in restorative justice practices, let me know.
It's the future of our system.
Absolutely.
We have to believe it.
Thank you. Carrie?
Last question, and thank you, and we'll share that information out. We'll get that from you and share it out. Tamika from Triple Bottom has the final question of the evening.
All right,
so
let's go.
let's have it. Bring us home. Bring us home.
Let's go.
All right, because incarcerated women was incarcerated little girls. So sometimes you got to start with the youth. So is there any programs that out there that start with the youth? Because sometimes my granddaughter, she's 14 and she's running everywhere. And then me and her mom is trying to help, but the system is not helping. And according to them, in order for them to help us, she has to get a case. Now, why do she have to get arrested to get help? So sometimes it starts as a child before it became an adult. So how do we help the children?
We can find unlimited resources to incarcerate people, right? We can look at children dead in the face and say, we don't have the resources for your school. We don't have the resources for after-school programs, for jobs, for all of the things that we know, can keep you healthy and safe, right? We don't have resources to make sure you have a healthy home, access to health care. But you mess up one time, and we can find as many resources as we can to make sure that you are incarcerated or you have a case. You have a conviction. That is what we are telling our children. We're telling them that they have no value until and unless they mess up, and then we care. And we need to do better, right? We need to do better as a society to let kids know that we do care when they're little, not when they make a mistake, right? I mean, of course, when they do make a mistake, but we care about you. We want to make sure you have school books and that your school's not closing. We want to make sure you have access to health care and an education. But we won't do that, and we'll pay for them to go to jail.
I can tell you about some programs, although we do have young girls, but my girls got ankle monitors on, so. But I can tell you about some programs for your granddaughter, okay? All right.
And to both of your points, Celeste, because our system is set up to be reactive instead of proactive. And because that's the genesis of it, we just gotcha again, right? This is the opportunity for our gotcha moment. One of the things I'm proud of in our office is that this is the first time, as I understand it, in the history of this office, is that we are now doing juvenile reentry. And so my first deputy director, Patty Jones-Thompson, oversees that specific initiative. Yay, shout it up for Patty. And so there is a specific initiatives for girls. She's right here in this red jacket. If you want to see her after, she can support you and give you some information so that we're not just throwing out abstract things, but things that we are really doing that you can tap into. Thank you. I think we have reached the end.
We have.
All right.
First of all, I want to thank this amazing panel, just blowing it out of the water. People that not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. You are doing all the work in the whole 360 of the ecosystem that we're in. We are blown away, and we are so grateful and just really honored to have you speak with us tonight, but also to be you being part of our community, you leading our community, and you all joining as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about May 27th. We are having a faith and restorative justice program on May 27th. I'd love to invite you all back for that program. I think it really continues the conversation that this team started and really looks at how we look at faith, reentry, and healing. That is the work we need to do. One more big round of applause for this brilliant moderator and brilliant panel. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.